On November 19, 2014, I was sitting, at home on the couch in the dark, in a quiet room, and I felt this is where I needed to be because I felt like God wanted to talk to me about something. Again, this was on November 19th, 2014. And so I heard God say twice, the Assyrians are coming. The Assyrians are coming. And so I asked Elohim, where are they coming to? And he said, to this land and to this country, with the intent to take it over. And I told my wife about it, and we just talked about it. But I looked up ancient Assyria, a whole bunch of information about them. That just didn't seem to click. So I just put it on the shelf. With this movement of a lot of the Syrian or Middle Eastern refugees to Europe, Germany, and now the United States in droves, I just thought about what God told me. So I did a little bit more research. And at first I thought that, the Syria movement, it's what's really funny about it is that the Middle East don't take them. They got to go west. They're not going to Saudi Arabia or Egypt. They coming west. But anyway, that's another story. So I figured that Syria was just the modern version of ancient Assyria. So after doing some research, I found out that they are not direct descendants. Syria, the people there that are in Syria now, are not direct descendants of ancient Assyrians. Even though they share similar land territory, modern Syria was formed after World War I and became independent after World War II. Syria was actually governed by the French, who replaced the Ottomans. Traditional areas of Assyria, ancient Assyria, are what we would know as Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. Now here's something that's real interesting. According to the Bible, Assyria, even though right now they pretty much don't even have a nation of their own, there's a bunch of people scattered. According to the Bible, though, Assyria will play a major role in the end times. The prophet Isaiah has called the Antichrist the Assyrian many times, and Micah, the prophet, said that the Antichrist will come from the land of Assyria. Very interesting. Assyria has been interchanged with Syria, and this started with the Greeks. And we know how the Greeks and the Romans decided to change history on their own so much. And just like a lot of cases, this is not biblical. Assyria, ancient Assyria, and Syria cannot be interchanged with each other. That is unbiblical and unscriptural, and is a mistake to do so. The Hebrew word for Syria is Aram. The Hebrew word for Assyria is Asher or Ashur. This is the same Asher or Ashur mentioned in Genesis chapter 10 verse 11. In the Bible, Syria is connected with Damascus. That would be Isaiah chapter 17 verse 3, Amos chapter 1 verse 5. Assyria is connected with Nineveh, Genesis chapter 10 verse 11, 2 Kings chapter 19 verse 36, and Isaiah chapter 37 verse 37. Today, Damascus is the capital of Syria. Nineveh is located in northern Iraq, and Babylon is modern-day Iraq. Assyria today does not exist as a nation, as I said before, and they lie, I should say, on the northern plains of North Iraq. The upcoming Psalms 83 war sheds light on what I said earlier about Assyria playing a role in times. This upcoming Psalms 83 war, which many prophets and many historians and biblical students of the word has been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years, the Psalms 83 war. In verse 8, it clearly states that Assyria will play a major role in the war against Israel. Assyria is mentioned by the name of Usher. God has used the Assyrian nations on many occasions as the judgment rod against Israel. Now, one thing we do know is that with the influence of the Assyrians on a spiritual level, will help usher the world into a rebellious state against God, and it's just the nature of that kind of beast. It is no wonder why America has been transformed right before our eyes into an Assyrian Muslim flavor. It's been transformed again right before our eyes, and they're trying hard to complete the transformation into an Assyrian Muslim country. The flavor is there. It's kind of like going to the bakery. You're hungry, and you can taste the particles as the bread is being cooked. You can taste it, and that's how it is now. The flavor is right there. Now, just as Nineveh, Babylon predominantly always opposed God. See, just as Nineveh, Babylon has always opposed God. So is the United States, as well as Europe and Germany and Australia, being systematically changed into spiritual evilness under the guise of religious freedom, Islam, tolerance, and we want to make the world a better place. But make no mistake about it, this spirit is ancient evil, and it would do what it has always done. It always opposed God, the children of God, the ways of God, the laws of God, the God that we serve, Jesus' Father, Yeshua's Father, that God. See, it's no coincidence that over 200 decorated military officers has been relieved of their duties under the current administration regime. This is called purging, along with an antichrist spirit, which is no longer being hid in Washington. This has spread to our military, being atheists on one hand, and then on the other hand, you have the freedom to worship any other God but Jesus. Now, something of a interest is that many Assyrians, even to this day, use the name of ancient Assyria kings, queens, gods, goddesses, and cities. And that's what they name themselves after. So it's not uncommon to meet an Assyrian today, and his name is Nimrod, or Sargon, or Ashur, or Ashur. Christian Assyrians also use biblical names such as Eshu, which is Jesus, Miriam, which is Mary, and Oham, which is Abraham. I just really want to give the Christian Assyrians they do, because there are some Christians Assyrians that's really trying to do the right thing. But the spirit of the Assyrians is not, and that's what I'm focusing on. As we can see in the Middle East, beyond the land of Israel, there is a religion purging by means of execution occurring. Actually, Israel, I'm not in love with Israel by no means. I think they got major issues. But it's pretty much the only country in the Middle East that allows religious freedom. Which, at this time, may be the only country in the West as well. Because Canada is whack. United Kingdom is whack. Germany is turning whack against Christians. So maybe Israel may be the only place right now where you can worship pretty much any God you want to in Jesus freely. How about that one? Unbelievable. Anyway, so we can see that there's a religious purging by means of execution and prosecution occurring within these lands. Christianity at this rate will soon be no more, especially in the ancient Assyrian region. Now, the change of spiritual owners and intolerance has spread it to every country in which the Islamic spirit is allowed to have its free reign. Again, think about that. This is taking place in non-traditional Islamic states, countries, continents, and even a hemisphere. Rome, Italy, United Kingdom, United States, Canada, and Australia, of all places. Australia is really just, God help Australia. They're really off the chart right now. Anyway, so what does all this mean? Without a doubt, most of the world leaders, with the exception of Vladimir Putin and the Asians, have embraced the Islamic Antichrist spirit waves and are passing laws to make sure that it becomes widespread. Wow. Leader of the KGB and 2 communist countries are the ones that's standing up. I have a prophecy that God gave me, a prophetic word. This is June 2011. So I'm just talking off the top of my head. And God made reference to Russia and China then. I'll put it on here later on. And he said a move will come out of Russia and China. And at the time, again, I didn't know what he was talking about, but now it becomes clear. I mean, as crazy as it seems, those are the main 2 countries that's standing so far. We know things can change against this Islamic movement and this homosexual movement. There will soon come religious ideas. Listen to this. Now, there will soon come religious ideas which will be negotiated and then passed into global laws. You can see that one's on the horizon. This isn't a heist, a takeover, or anything like that. This country, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and it seems like right now even Germany have decided to hand over the keys of their countries to the ancient evil terrorists. That's exactly what's going on. While Christians and other people do very little. It's amazing that the majority of Christians, churches, and leaders on television, and mega churches and big churches, with the ability to reach millions of people and affect millions of people's lives, are silent on this. They are having church as usual. Pass the plate. We need this money. And instead of you working out issues with your brothers and sisters in other churches, you ostracize them and you talk about them and you just belittle other people who don't look like you or may have a different revelation of God than you do, or who don't dress like you. So I understand why the world ain't checking for Christianity. And if I didn't have a personal encounter with God on numerous occasions and have him talk to me, no way I would be a Christian. Forget that one. So I understand why the world feel the way that it does, like a lot of people does. At this point, it's not about nobody's being perfect. It's about we're not learning from our mistakes. And that's the reason why I made my personal statement. It's not about making mistakes. We all make them. We're not learning from our mistakes. We don't look to our brothers and begin to follow what the scripture says we should do. We know in part, we prophesy in part, and yet each church and each leader want to act like they got it all going on, as if they know everything from Genesis to Revelation. And if there's anything said that they don't agree with, then it must be wrong. Even though other people have more revelation than they do. That's the kind of thing that goes on. That's really horrible in Christianity. It's a multitude of things that goes on that's horrible in Christianity.